So when I first started out in the HR employee benefit space over 20 years ago now, when we referred to work health and safety professionals back then, we were pretty much thinking of them as the compliance police, someone who applied policies, made sure that, boxes were ticked, all the legal stuff was happening in relation to safety. And over the years, more and more complexity has been added to those roles. So every year we'd sort of add something new. There'd be new hazards, new laws, new reporting expectations, more understanding about what was involved in actually applying this. Psychosocial safety became the real thing, and we had to start to think about the psychological impacts of work. And then there's this sort of debate on, well, what is work health and safety supposed to do? Is it strategic? Is it administrative? Is it compliance? The honest answer is it's all three of them. And the real issue that these professionals come up against isn't sort of philosophical. It's often structural. It's the fact that we just keep adding complexity to the workplace systems so that at some point the work turns into overload. It turns into this feeling of like, often then what I have to focus on is the administrative compliance side of the work, when actually I've got all this knowledge about the structure of an organization, behavioral psychology, behavioral science, and unfortunately often we just don't get to that, not because we don't want to or because we don't think it's important, but because we just don't have time. And I actually think a lot of that system needs to be pulled down, and we need to do a bit of a re-engineer of how we're thinking about it. And I think the next few years are actually going to change everything. Modern organizations are under relentless pressure. We've got constant change going on. There's a real, push for increased productivity, move faster. Can we do more with less? We want to, drive transformation while protecting margins. And those pressures don't just disappear because we've got checklists and policies and they have a tendency to create high work demands, poorly managed change, low role clarity. We can start to increase stress. The more that we put people under stress, the more that we're getting them to rush and hurry, the more likely they are to act outside of accordance to their values. So we have these core values on the wall, but they're not being operationalized because the system is optimized and prioritizing this constant demand for productivity, for transformation. We're re-engineering all the time. People have this need for, I tend to like to want to know what's coming. I want some certainty. I need clarity. I need to be treated respectfully. Taking a break is often just a way for me to recharge. So when we work constantly under pressure, we're seeing this spike in psychosocial hazards and actual risks eventuate because of the way the workplace is structured and how it's optimized. Okay. So, and I'm talking generally, a lot of workplaces are under these kind of pressures, and they're not fringe issues anymore. They're legislative hazards that we have an obligation to meet from a board level down. And the consequences are real. We know that complex psychosocial safety risks cause damage to people, and they can also result in, injury claims. They result in high turnover, burnout. So, ironically, they threaten what we're actually the system that's optimizing is causing. So we've really got to kind of think hard about this. And a lot of organizations are still putting this onto, minimal individuals, sometimes one, and asking them to do it manually. And it just doesn't work. It's a broken system that has this, the harder it is and the more need you have for the proactive elements, the more likely you are, or the less likely rather you are to get to them, because you're in that sort of perpetuating cycle of and anyone that's in the field will know getting people back to work is very complex. Dealing with the people's managers is very complex. Dealing with constant change adds an added layer of complexity. And a lot of the systems that we've got to measure this also are ineffective. So, we can look at things and put things into workflows that remind us to act, but they're not maybe necessarily interpreting things correctly. They're not giving us any sense of how to judge. Psychosocial risk management doesn't fit neatly inside of a survey or a form, or, it emerges from interactions and, the way work is designed, the way work is structured. And most workplace health and safety technology is really good at storing evidence, but it's not very good at reducing the risk. And often a lot of these systems are siloed as well. So you might have one that does your surveys and one that does another measurement of where your forms sit, and one's helping you create forms, and et cetera, et cetera. There's, nobody wants to sit with 50 different systems. We'd really quite like it all to be in the one. And we know risk is not an individual problem. It doesn't happen because, people don't know how to cope. It sort of happens when threats get normalized and the system keeps creating it. No one's seeing it. We're just dealing with the outcomes. So we know that AI is going to be a game changer for this because we've done the work. We've mapped these workflows, and there's many areas. In fact, in our research, we can see sort of 40 to 50% of the work that a work health and safety professional has to complete can be effectively automated. We know the work health and safety people have the ability and the knowledge to put these automations into place. They understand the work. The problem in your general models, so your ChatGPT, your Claude, building out with those, is they're not really sort of fit for the safety critical work that you're going to be doing. So you're going to have to, think about legal defensibility, jurisdiction specific legislation, making sure the AI understands all of the terminology, evidence trails that stand up in audits and investigations. So your mainstream LLMs, whilst they're pretty impressive, they're fast, they're conventional, they're accessible. Building that out and keeping that up to date and having that really well informed is really a lot of work. And take it from me, we're building that, and we have built that, and it's complex. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of infrastructure and stuff under the covers that you have to do. There's months of evaluations and tests, and it's a really, really complex area to work in and to build. But when you do it, it works really, really well. And it is actually, at the moment, what we see is the needed piece to allow health and safety professionals who have ended up in this position where they've got so much more on their plate actually apply their knowledge and expertise where they make the most value. So, a work health and safety professional updating a policy isn't adding the strategic value to your business that they could be adding if you could automate that. And what we want to do is automate that so these people can add strategic value, because at the moment, they're not the legislation and compliance police. They're a strategic asset that you need to unlock, because when we get this right, as I said about in the beginning, this is where people do their best work. People do not operate at their best when they're clouded with cortisol, when they're in that threat state, when they're fatigued, they're overworked, okay? It's not about making work comfortable. It's about getting work to the point that it feels, yes, I can be stretched. Yes, I can have some appropriate tension, but it's supported tension and it's balanced. Okay, I can take a break because that's a strategic advantage for me to come back and have better insights and, innovate better. I make less mistakes. You want psychological safety, you're going to have people connected to the purpose of what they're doing. They're going to have to feel, I can speak up. When we get that, we get more innovation. We have less mistakes again, but all of this comes with get these professionals in a position where they can operate at the top of their license. So let's automate the stuff that we know is bogging them down, and then it's not where they're doing their best work. And this is why a lot of the time we get really frustrated, because we see health and safety, well-being, psychosocial risk, whatever you want to call it, kind of get pushed into the little tick box, I've got to have it, but I don't really see it as a strategic work. Believe me, it's strategic. And when you get this right, you're going to realize the value of things like, massive reduction in turnover, sick days, huge improvements in engagement, innovation. As we automate more and more work, where do we want people operating? We want them operating from the position of they're critical thinkers, they're able to apply empathy to what they're doing, they're great listeners, that is where the magic happens. And all of the work that we're looking at is going to go through this transformation. So we look at it from the lens of work health and safety, but it will happen across your organization. And the more that you apply AI thoughtfully and in a way that adds value, the more you're going to need your people to be really well supported. Really, psychosocial risk needs to be low, because we know that impacts, okay? People don't do their best work when they're under constant pressure and it hasn't been managed properly. So we want to move from the reactive work where we're still looking at harm as it occurs and we're basically fixing things as they happen, to actually getting the right system so we can move up the maturity curve from reactive to proactive to eventually predictive. So you get like a digital twin of your organization from a risk architectural perspective and say, hey, we've got a restructure coming. I'm going to model what that's going to look like. I'm going to model my leadership capabilities. Where are the pressure points? I'm going to predict risk before it actually occurs, so I can simulate. I don't even have to absorb it, then I can have things in front of risk. This is not just theoretical, it's operational. It's a difference between chasing claims and preventing them. So reactive safety management is not what you want. It's managing damage, okay? Predictive safety management prevents it. So if you can simulate, you can see, you can look ahead. And this is the stuff that now with AI is actually possible. So, even when we have really good systems and we think we're measuring and managing things, we can still default to these pressures. So automation just gives you that edge. It releases the actual expertise that you've got sitting in your organization doing work that has to be done, but is frustrating because really we want to get to the higher value stuff, and we know that we can automate this now. If this resonates and you'd like to sort of have a look at what this looks like in practice, we offer a free audit. You can go through it. It applies to the legislation that you work under. So we've mapped out all the various legislations across Australia, along with the Australian Safe Work Model Codes of Practice, ISO 45003. We've got all of that mapped. You can audit yourself against all of those different frameworks and legislation, and you can use AI to see how AI can actually give you uncover gaps, look at your risks, help you analyze policies, analyze what you're doing, and it'll also apply our blueprint to what you're doing to show where your advantages for automation sit, where you can actually start to implement them, and a system like this to just give it a whirl. If you continue to want to do things manually, you come away with a roadmap of how you're going to actually implement that, what it's going to look like. But it also gives you the ability to test it out, take it for a test drive. There's no obligation. We just know that we want to help organizations start to move towards this, because we want to see the work health and safety professionals actually start to really make an impact and make a difference. And that's where we know they can, when we can free them up from all of the administrative burden that they actually find exists in their current roles and in the current way that they're doing their work. So reach out if you'd like to have a try of the audit. We'll get you set up, and it's very simple to set up. Takes about an hour to complete, and as I said, you get access to all of those roadmaps and tools and reports that give you the information that you need to start thinking about ways that you can level up and automate the tasks that are bogging you down at the moment. Thanks for listening.